As per usual, this is going to start off spoiler-free. Don't worry, I'll definitely let you know when we get into the real spoiler territory. But if you haven't seen the movie yet, you're not going to be spoiled straight away. Other than shuffled footage they've chucked out in the marketing anyway. Toy Story 1 has the worst animation in a Toy Story movie. Toy Story 2 has the worst joke in the post-credits. Toy Story 3 gives you the worst feeling in your stomach after it's done. Toy Story 4 has the worst layout and formula for a movie. And Toy Story 5 has the worst messaging. I won't tell you how just yet, but that is the point. The audacity for Pixar to make another Toy Story movie is a hard uphill battle for them. And while I previously have been a good defender of Toy Story 4 to a certain extent, I at least fully thought it justified its placement due to some of the directions it went and some of the messaging it had to tell. It was an ending we didn't realize we needed, but it was still an ending, added on top of already the perfect ending. So when I heard about a 5th installment to this franchise, I no longer had such patience. And judging by all of the trailers that we were keeping up with over the last year, it looked to be so weird about it as well. You know what I mean? According to the trailer, it was going for like a final loose end with so many references to the first Toy Story movie that didn't feel deserved. Why are they recreating memes? I don't know. Why are they making Woody old now? I don't know. What are they doing in this movie? I don't know. There was at least one detail in the very center of it that was obviously meant to be the point of the movie, right? It was tackling the concept of technology. It is tackling iPad babies, and I thought that was the one defendable point in concept behind this movie. If you nail the point of this movie, the messaging there is to say about kids these days and how they interact with devices, poke something that the parents can laugh at and then learn from, you're good and set for another glorious, maybe even classic of a Toy Story movie. Toy Story 5 is not a classic Pixar movie. It's just not. You watch Toy Story 2 again, it is far and beyond above this movie. In fact, I would go on to say my most controversial take on this is that Toy Story 5 is the worst Toy Story movie. But that doesn't mean it's a bad movie. I defend Toy Story 4. I think the execution of so many of the things it's trying to do work to make it a glorious Pixar project. Good, better than neutral, and at least it can get your heart going. Toy Story 5 is on the same level as Toy Story 4, but kind of in a reverse way. Whereas Toy Story 4 has a lot of narrative problems, Buzz Lightyear kind of being the front and center main one, Toy Story 5 as a formula works out better. The beginning is incredibly fast-paced and it kind of just rockets you into the whole concept very quickly. But otherwise, the actual dialogues that people have are good. They're decent. But it did not nail an ending or an emotional highlight well enough or anywhere close to what it could have been or what it has been before, and I think only ever comes out as just another Toy Story. A good one. You might have a great time watching it. I won't deny you that. But this kind of could have been a special, you know, a good couple of specials in this movie. Remember the specials? The spin-offs? Those are great. One of the specials already did Toy Story 1 again, so why don't we have this one that kind of does Toy Story 2 again? And 1, again, kind of. We'll get there in the specifics later. Now, I will say, I came into this movie with a bit of a grumble. I was expecting there to be an uphill battle. I was looking for critiques. But to be honest, this movie ended up better than what I was expecting, because it is actually the case of this running theme. I just have beef with the Pixar marketing team, man. So many times did we see references to Toy Story 1 that I thought felt cheap, a lazy attempt at nostalgia to boost up the popularity of a movie, and those references are pretty much the only references in the movie. Is it still unearned that they do the recreation of Buzz Look at Alien quote? Yeah, kind of. But I think it's a bit more justifiable in context. It wasn't like a recurring thing they did that often. And like the Holt who goes there bit as well is because like they're recreating an old memory they have. It's faintly more justifiable. The marketing just makes these movies look more obnoxious. That's what it is. I'll take that on in future. What do you know? Trailer bad. They have been for ages. Ever since the mini trailer at the start, far too many bass tracks, pop culture songs in the middle, and you know, the exact formula of a trailer. Similarly, I made a dig on the Pizza Planet truck appearance that looks normal in the context of the movie. The two shots don't feel like a heavy two shots anymore, and did genuinely flow normally in the movie. Just apparently when the trailer does it, it doesn't feel the same. Mostly. Kind of. There is an element of suspending your disbelief that this movie starts to crackle on by the end of the movie, but again, we'll get there in the specifics. But when we actually get into the meat of the antics surrounding Toy Story 5, I like a lot of what I see. The concept of toys versus tech, completely skimming out the screen time iPad baby element, they do a really good job of giving us these new spins on the Toy Story world. Yet again, there's always something, such as the introduction of tech-based toys. You've got a toilet paper device that helps you learn to be toilet trained. You've got a camera toy that physically works as a camera, and all sorts of things are connected to the internet, communicate with each other, and make all sorts of messagings to each other and some mechanics to play with. In a lot of ways, I think that is really nice and refreshing, really interesting to see, and Pixar uses that as an opportunity to tell all sorts of techie-related jokes. They are all joke 1, 2, and 3. It's weird. I think it works, but it feels very Illumination-y. You know what I mean by joke 1? Like having an adult character on a Zoom call, and then he mutes himself, and then he changes the backgrounds. Wow, I remember those memories 6 years ago. And I'm kind of tired of it. I had 2 years straight of that life. Now, to be fair, Toy Story 4 came out in 2019, so it would be the next one that covers it. But even still, it felt like a lot of these jokes were 10 years old already. But at least they were delivered nicely that it did still entertain the audience I was watching with. There's loads of puns, like saying the word connection, and I'm like, oh, a connection! We need to connect them via technology! Oh, we need to charge right ahead on this. You're right, charge! We need to do something about the batteries! Blah, blah, blah. You know, and it's like, I don't, like, it worked, but it didn't feel special. It felt, in a lot of ways, easy. Kind of shortcutting, the kind that you would expect to see out of a 5th movie of something. There is also, on a meta sense, a really interesting connection with animals in the Toy Story movies. The first movie obviously has an evil dog, the 4th movie has an evil-ish cat, and in this one, they really go off on it with animals. There's at least like 3 photorealistic animals, way more actually now that I remember a certain scene, that really is like a lingering thing of the toys interacting with animals. It's an interesting background thing I hadn't properly paid attention to, I guess. Just them showing off how good their photorealism is, I guess. Sometimes those scenes, like there's one with a squirrel, was just kind of there. Alright. But nice. I think in a lot of ways, of course, as usual, the animation is absolutely stellar. Although the humans are looking a little bit weird as the technology gets better, how ironic, the actual landscaping intermixed with the materials of the toys in their different formats is very, very good. The animal animation is fantastic, the photorealistic nature pieces is stellar, and the cinematography, I would assume, was still doing all sorts of brilliant things. I'll be honest, I wasn't paying attention as strongly as I was with the likes of Toy Story 4. But I would assume it's all the same, that kind of aesthetic, done well and to a T. Just for some reason, focusing on Woody's belly distending for some reason. I don't know. Buzz Lightyear, thankfully, was a far better installment than his predecessor one movie ago. They finally worked out how to do him right. They just gave him a regular character arc, essentially. And then they copied the beats from previous movies. He's in an argument with Woody, so it's Toy Story 1. And he's got a bunch of clones, so it's Toy Story 2 again. They love those 2 movies. This movie is basically referencing everything except Toy Story 3, I think. It's the vibe I'm getting. Either way though, it works very nicely. Buzz is a fun character again. We enjoy him all throughout. Another thing on the animation front I absolutely adore is the actual imagination world. We get to see more elements of the fantasy element of what's in a kid's head, which is really nice. It works very nicely. Would love to have seen more of it. But obviously we're too late into the franchise now. What are the odds they're going to do another Toy Story? It wasn't an ending this movie, so you know what? There probably will be a Toy Story 6 when they lose their budget again. But yeah, I think there's a lot of really nice creative decisions, and the actual antics that happen work very nicely in this movie. It is a good Toy Story movie. Much in the same way those specials are great Toy Story additives, and when we're not over-pasting over an ending we beloved, it's nice to see the characters again. We technically have the biggest ensemble we've ever seen for a Toy Story movie, I'm pretty sure at this point, but they get around a lot of the usual ensemble bloat issues, although the OG cast do not say very much in this movie, but at least they're not being halted around everywhere for them to say nothing in the movie. It's a slight improvement, sure. There's a lot of different squads of toys that we see in pieces. Now the OG cars is just another one of them. A couple of cameos of characters I didn't think we would be seeing make an appearance. And ironically, one of my favorite characters somehow does turn out to be the toilet humor guy. There's a guy who's almost exclusively making jokes like that. But I think it's because one of the jokes really got through the cracks with me, where his name's Chet, and he's like, please, it's pronounced shat. And again, like, it's a good, the kids didn't notice. What a great way to sneak out a swear word. And all of the other poop jokes are at least layered, so you know what, it's fine. For the most part. Sometimes he just replaces a word in a sentence and it's like, alright. And at the end of the day, if you want to have a nice, good, standard Toy Story story, it's not an ending, it's just a little bit more. Somewhat finishing the arc of another character. Is it really a finish? Is it really a pinpointed thing? Not really, it's just faintly removing one of their insecurities. Kind of. Although, considering their other insecurities as being locked in a box, that's also just disappeared this movie. It is fine. Good. Maybe even great to you. And that's fine. But for being a 5th installment, it's only ever more. And if there was a bigger idea here, I don't think they hit the mark. So from this point on, let's talk about the specifics and spoilers. Because there was something bigger here. There was something they were trying to do, and some things I think they didn't need to touch, and then didn't do well at all. So let's spin around. I'll see you after this plug. Hey there, they could making it to probably not the halfway mark of this video, but at least the spoilery part. Come subscribe if you're interested in more animated movie reviews. We'll do Shrek 5 when it comes out. The very best movies and the very worst. This one's unfortunately just neutral, good, great. You'll see why in a sec. Now to the second half of our review of Toy Story 5. So, let's just get into it, shall we? Toy Story 5 has the worst messaging. The worst point to be here. As much as Toy Story 1 and 2 are just there to exist, be fun movies, and start a franchise, 3 has a specific ending, 4 wants to give an extra ending to a specific character, and 5 kind of wants to touch on the concept of iPad babies, right? But at the end of this movie, does it say anything about iPad babies? How to handle growing up as a child in this hyper-addictive social media text world? How ironic that we're talking about Toy Story 5 right as a 16-year-old social media ban. But hey, maybe that's a discussion for another day. Because the answer is no. There isn't a thing to this. Not really. I kind of came into it and expected there to be some sort of resolution where faintly there would be a message of, hey parents, maybe parent your kids a little bit, give them some screen time restrictions. And ironically, they do talk about screen time right at the start. The parents are very hesitant with the iPad and really try to parent it well, saying you're going to have screen time limitations after the first day. And at one point, Buzz and Woody do bring down the screen time all the way to the bottom. Doesn't go anywhere, doesn't become a thing later on. Bonnie at any minute can have the iPad whenever she wants to, and it just goes on and does its stuff. The iPad itself, LilyPad, has some fun mechanics, right? I like a lot of the actual things she's able to do. I like that she's immediately able to send every toy into the garage. That's a nice bit. I like that you say, hey Lily, she wakes up and has to do what you say. That's a great bit. Somehow surprised I haven't seen that before. Great. Somehow a bit from 10 years ago, but hey, if no one's done it, great. Go for it. It's original. But another thing about LilyPad is, and surprisingly here, she does surprisingly want what's best for Bonnie. So she goes, over-commandeers and does her own thing until it becomes destructive and actually hurts their kid in the end. That, unfortunately, sounds like another recent Pixar movie. LilyPad is just another version of anxiety from Inside Out 2. It is a formula piece that is an unfortunate parallel that I can't help but think Inside Out 2 did better. Because what if tech didn't want what's best for the kid? What if the apps, games, and websites built inside of an iPad are intrinsically addictive and meant to hoard away all of the attention out of a child? You know, like the real world. Wouldn't that be a far better stage to tell a story, to do something about it, to have a message that can go beyond the screen? It doesn't happen. There's a point where the lily pad chucks themselves in the bin into the Tri-County donations box, which is the same brand as the one Jesse was abandoned in. I picked that reference up before they recreate that shot, but for the lily pad suddenly from that backstory. It's fine. The character has a depth that goes in a direction. They want what's best for the kid, and they learn to work together by the end. As if it's Toy Story 1 again. Buzz and Woody learn to get along. There's a new iPad. iPad and Jesse learn to get along. But that's not really useful. Sorry to get on the point of where the techs have their insecurities, but I don't like that. I came into this hoping they would nail the iPad baby bit. There are iPad babies in this world, and I don't expect them to solve every iPad issue. Woody doesn't have to finish his arc after witnessing that all kids have gone to tech. But it is kind of weird that there's an epidemic. He helps Jesse with their faint thing. It succeeds via luck that doesn't really matter. I'll get there in a bit. And then Woody will just go on to witness more of the epidemic and then not fix it. Is this a delay and they'll do it in Toy Story 6? I feel like the wind's kind of gone out their sails by now. I doubt it. I wish they did a point on that. Nothing's really done about the other iPad kids, and instead they become the usual punchline where there are several scenes of toys going all the way through the house. All members of the family are so stuck to their devices that they don't notice the toys in their antics. Okay. That's a funny, standard joke. Now the toys get to do more crazy things. Helpful, but it's not, anything. And on the Bonnie side specifically, you would think there would really at least be a point, a message, a spin of that kind, even if it only goes to one kid. But the solution is, Bonnie's not really built for tech. And the problem isn't even necessarily the tech. It's not the fact that it is addictive. It's simply the fact that the other iPad kids are a bunch of little shits. The spin on this tech has been exclusively the social element, which is interesting. But it just goes to say, the problem is the 3 kids that Bonnie tried to connect with. They are just unsavable and kicking Bonnie down. So she learns to not use her lily pad as often and find a kid who doesn't use tech already. It's just not the messaging I was hoping it would be, because it just infers, Bonnie's just not like them. The iPad kids, they're done for. When a kid watches this, is the point just, hey, let's expose a version of events where the kid prefers playing with toys? Maybe if kids see another kid playing with toys, they'll think, hey, I want to play with toys. If it's just mere exposure and nothing more, it's not a good message. It's not a good point. It's not as strongly justified to be here. It's just another 5th Toy Story movie. I mean, it's also kind of weird that the main problem conflict is iPad babies. You make them the antagonist and you don't solve them? I don't know, it just seems a little mean-spirited. I feel like there maybe was a draft that said, hey, let's address this. Let's do something about it. Let's blame the tech itself. But they don't. And I feel like there's some sort of softening that's happened over drafts or something, because if you're not going to call out the tech itself as bad and just make one tech character good, and also the kid doesn't want the tech that much, so it's good, it just isn't right. It's not a good execution for what I guess was almost meant to be the point. It's the closest thing to a point they have, isn't it? But okay, if it's not necessarily meant to be about the messaging of screen time and iPad babies, it's just that tech is the villain of the week and here's some conflicts around it. What it's otherwise really meant to be about is Jessie finishing her arc that we didn't know we had to finish, and poking a lot on the story of Emily. I've got a lot of thoughts about this. Let's talk about Buzz first, actually. A brief one. They introduced this side piece idea of a big group of tech-informed buzzes, and it's kind of just like a fun bit. This could have been a short. A fun short, nice to see. I like some of the bits they have. I like that they are following the star. They're following for Star Command this whole time. And I like how a star imagery keeps following them along the movie. There are some fun antics that happen. It's kind of just like, here's a break for some kind of eye candy in a weird way. But then, at the same time, what was the point of all those buzzes being in this movie, other than antics ensue? Because they're helpful for a whole 2 things. They are just a plot device in 2 places. And maybe that's what all movies come down to. Everything's a plot device for something. Maybe it's because I was looking into this hoping to be critical. There's a point where we realize all of the buzzes are their own Wi-Fi hotspots. I think that's a cool mechanic. It lets them search further out on a map for something or other. The other thing they then come to learn is all of them as well have one last upgrade in the form of being a drone. And that's pretty damn cool. You're right, a drone is technically a toy. Now all the buzzes can literally fly and they do their thing. Woody does bring out the "this is falling with style" thing, and I don't think that's an earned line either, actually, now I think about it. Like, it feels like just a cheap reference. There's a few cheap references. It's getting cheaper and cheaper as I talk about this. Maybe there were a couple more references to Toy Story 1 that are just shoved in there for nostalgia, but alright. But the rest of their contribution to this movie is just to be like a D plot to follow for fun things that happen. You know, there's some interesting bits. There's a point where they freeze in front of an adult and then question why they froze, but it doesn't go any further than that. I guess it's just meant to be like a tease of fan theories. Alright. All it really is they eventually end up at the same place as Jessie and Woody and Buzz, and then go on to kidnap Woody to interrupt them briefly, and then they just follow along for the rest of the movie. They're fun. And it's certainly better than a Buzz listening to his own inner voice the whole time. But it did feel a little bit random. A little bit of a movie 5-ism. And then they practically forgot them in the ending until you see them in a post-credit scene where they all come flying down and swarming a bunch of kids on the playground. There was another element to them that was meant to be that they kind of speed run the Buzz Lightyear arc. They're looking for their purpose and they come to learn that their purpose is being loved by a toy. But they don't do that well either. There's a lot of things they don't execute well. There's a moment where one Buzz Lightyear is loved by a toy in the middle of their antics, in the middle of a campsite, and that's really good. I wish they lent back to that at one point, because Buzz just tells them, and that's that arc done. And then the next time you see them, they're floating down to a bunch of kids. I feel like that could have been a little bit bigger. Yeah, it's literally tell, don't show that they did there. On the other side of things, they spoiled the Zurg is your father plotline to them all. And then they tell one more Star Wars reference. Very nice. He goes, look within yourselves. You know it to be true. It's like, okay, nice. Let's see what you're doing there. Yeah. Sometimes it's nice. Sometimes it's bad. That sounds like a neutral, a good movie to me. The worst a Toy Story movie has ever been. Right, okay. Let's talk about the Emily side of life, right? A whole other fan theory element that they're now digging on about what's going on with Emily, right? When I first saw a recreation of that flashback back in the trailers, I hated it. I thought it was incredibly cheap and undeserving to remake over one of the highlights of the entire franchise. If you can't make your own new emotional swelling moment for another movie, don't make another movie. That was my take. I didn't want to see this remastered. If it was that Bonnie just happened to have the same antics, then there's something to say there. I was very curious to see how this turns out, and it's interesting. This whole movie is about the Emily connection. They retcon the idea that Emily's name is written on Jessie's leg. You know what? That's fine. And it comes with an address. You know what? That's fine. Specifically, on the character side of things with Jessie, she has an insecurity about being abandoned that comes up a couple of times, as well as not wanting to lose yet again another child for the third time. So there's something to be ingrained there. There's some really cool plot points where Jessie is taken to the original address of Emily, and it seems like she gets to have a nostalgic moment in her own original room. And you can really tell that they're dwelling directly on that Emily history. We go right back to that actual tree and tire set piece. That is a very genuinely strong emotional bit. And the whole time, you're wondering if Emily's actually going to appear, if Jessie's going to be taken to Emily. There's a long time where Jessie doesn't end up in the house, and you think Emily might be in the house. There's a moment where a picture is taken of her and sent to everybody, and you're like, or I was thinking, oh my god, she's gonna be photographed as a lost toy, and Emily's gonna randomly appear at the door, all grown up, looking for her toy. That would have been wow. Instead, to justify all of this Emily stuff, beyond just being a thing pushing the character forwards and keeping you on your toes the whole time, when it comes to the final moment with Emily, the final emotional swell, right? There's gotta be an emotional swell in a Pixar movie, especially a Toy Story one. The old Emily one is the best they've ever done. No, I can't say that. That's not true, but God, is it really, really, really high. So the fact that Pixar doesn't show Emily directly, I think could be nice and artsy in a way, you know? Having a bit of a less is more element. Same with how in Onward, Spoilers for that movie, by the way. You gonna watch it? You would have already by now. The main character doesn't get to speak to his dad in full form. Instead, only his older brother gets to chat to him, and the protagonist only gets to watch from a distance. That is more impactful for seeing less of it. That being said, the actual emotional swell of this movie, the bit that's really meant to justify a movie's existence, if it's not the ending and the message, it's the emotionally core, most heartful bit, right? And I'd heard good things about this heartful bit. I heard very high praises for this emotionally swelling bit. I was braced for something to blow me out of the world. But the emotional highlight is not a sequence. It's not a scene. It's not a music number. There is no music behind it. It's not a when somebody loved me. It's not a flashback. It's not a moment. It is a trivia fact. Let's be honest. It's a fact that we learn in the movie. Now, the concept of that fact is not a problem, but the execution of learning that fact is, because it wasn't strong enough. I love the concept. Turns out Emily named her daughter Jessie. Wow, that is good. That could go somewhere. But the fact that we just see it by Jessie pointing at a picture, you know, there's a word on a tree that you realize isn't this Jessie, it's the daughter Jessie, she was here, is less impactful than it could have been. I know that it's more artsy and, you know, reserved to say less is more, but there's a million ways you can tell this message that I think just would have been bigger and better. And it doesn't have to be that we see Emily directly either, but you could do some big things. What if there was a little bit of a mix-up that adult Emily is now looking for Jessie the toy after seeing it posted online? What if Jessie finds within this box that Emily was searching to find her again, despairing of the fact that she got donated at some point and was, you know, equally tragically looking for her, and they never met? What if you had a scenario where Jessie visibly sees Emily and the daughter off in the distance, witnessing them at least, and then hearing her say, Jessie calling to her daughter? Or go even further and have Jessie accidentally find Jessie in the wild and play with her, and then hear her name being called out by the mum, and then her to be dropped by Jessie, and then going over, seeing that it's Emily, seeing that the daughter was named Jessie, and then before Emily can come and find the Jessie doll that Jessie is explaining she found a Jessie, I hope you're following, Jessie has then run away, and they don't meet because, you know, she has a Bonnie to go to, she's moved on, but it's like a moment, a crossing of paths. Something more than a photo and a fact would have been nice, because, like, it doesn't, or even just start playing the song. I know I said I hate the self-referential stuff, but if you just started playing immediately after we learned that, When Somebody Loved Me, or reprise it so the lyrics are, you know, and somebody loved me, like, you don't know, give me music. Apparently Taylor Swift has a new song in this. I don't think I remember hearing a lyrical song apart from in the credits. Is that what we're doing now? We're using Taylor Swift's name to advertise a movie and then we just chuck her in the credits? What's the point? Or how's about just generally, right? When I first heard that there's an Emily connection, I thought it was cheap and unearned. Why is any of the Emily element in this movie? This is a movie about tech and toys, right? A little bit of Jessie's character exploration. A kind of a repeat of Toy Story 1. A new toy comes in to replace the old toy. You can still have the abandonment issues, since she's being abandoned actively by Bonnie, without having to go to Emily's house. Does Jessie learn something from the house? I don't think so. Does Jessie learn anything from going at the tree? Only her own lore that we didn't need to dive on again. Leaving it alone is just as tragic and good, but then you realize, other than this Emily thing that they've crammed in, there is no real other emotional swelling moment to be had here. It feels like they wanted to tell this tech story, and then they wanted to have something emotional in the middle of it, so they grabbed their old good pal tragic backstory and remastered it into the forefront, poking on the fan theories that their crowd are clearly interested in, and then calling it a day with a minimal scene with no sound and a kind of tell don't show element to it. I don't know, man. I love the concept. I love the idea, but I hate the delivery and the execution. It's the worst emotionally swelling moment of a Toy Story movie, and it's the worst message overall, because there isn't one. It doesn't address the elephant in the room, if you ask me. Oh, and also one other emotional bit, the low point, I guess, is that Bonnie does, in fact, abandon Jessie, doing so from peer pressure from the iPad kids on her group chat. You know, faintly poking on the idea that tech is actively overstepping and causing damage, but it's only the social element of what these kids say as they post almost AI memes of her crying. There's something to be said there about tech overstepping, overcorrecting, and that's a problem, but that's not quite the direction they went with. It's just the iPad kids' fault. Cool that it comes round that Jessie gets abandoned again. That is a shock that she says it. You know, it's a low point. But with everything else that goes around it, still not the best low point, nor is it the best high. Just a twist in the middle. The rest of the story, the antics, the meat on the bones, is great, but the bones on the bone is worse. Worse than Toy Story 4. And then the other final thing, right? Alongside the ending just kind of being, Bonnie's not built for tech, because the iPad babies are not very friendly. I'm gonna go play around with the one other child who plays with toys still. That's the solution. Don't play with the tech, because that's just what you're like. That's the answer. Just don't, they don't do. The other thing they really start doing by the end is struggling to suspend your disbelief on them being caught by adults. By the end, there's all the buzzes running to the final area. All the buzzes all have horses to ride on. It's very much the horse girl has all the horses. It's great. But just like how I complained that they are running and then freeze as a group in front of the Pizza Planet truck, one of the other final beats in the movie is all of the drone buzzes flying in formation above an active road. There are cars going forwards in both lanes in front of this swarm at the end of a tunnel. Oh, by the way, Buzz and Jessie kiss. Great. Kind of weird to see toys kiss, but, you know, if it works, it works. Great, cool. What a great, you know, the arc's better than Buzz Lightyear's ever had. Well, it's a good one for him. But they're just doing it on top of a bunch of cars. There's literally a car coming towards them. They would see the drones flying in front of them. Maybe a drone is allowed to be witnessed, but they will see the toys dangling and moving, right? Like, it's a bit much. And there's a few times where they're blatantly in front of cars with people in it. Well, you don't see the people, so maybe they're just self-driving at this point. And it was a little bit like, man, they're breaking one of the core rules, apart from when they did it that one time with Sid. Just something I couldn't help but not notice by the time we got to the ending. Oh, the Woody and Buzz argument was a thing for the trailers and to reference Toy Story 1. It doesn't go anywhere. All of the argument points are in the trailer. And then there's a point where Woody's like, look, he tries to save the argument, but gets ignored. And then immediately he gets kidnapped, almost eaten by a pig, and then Buzz protects him against all the other Buzzes, and that's that over. So it's like kind of just like bait at that point. There's faintly a point, I guess, about tech can be useful. All right. But only for like the toy tech device hybrids and for the iPad in certain situations, but not really anything applicable. Bonnie just happens to find Blaze, another friend who plays with toys. That's kind of it. The bold belly Woody doesn't go anywhere. It's just a thing to point and laugh as the guy ages. But to be fair, there was a middle-aged man in my audience absolutely loving most of the jokes. But, you know, he was laughing at the Zoom call jokes. So I guess it was just, it was, you know, caught up to him. Some of the photos looked uncannily like AI images, but I think it's just the style they went with. But, you know, for a minute I was like, They make a joke about how being on low battery means you're essentially drunk and drowsy. Alright, cool, classic. You get an appearance from Duke, Kaboom, Key and Peele, and a Combat Carl, because there's always one of them. We don't address the fact that Jessie shoves herself into a dark, closed, zipped-up suitcase and doesn't really bat an eye about it. She's just ready for it, I guess. And then at the end of the day, the two girls are having so much fun playing with toys that the twins over there that were laughing at her for playing with toys earlier decide to join in because they feel like they're getting a bit of FOMO. And it's interesting because there's definitely things they poked on, like the idea of kids growing up too fast with technology, or like toys just being happy to catch it while they can. You know, very much a beat of Toy Story 2 there. But it's just, you know, it's nothing about like kids too young being put on tech, so they grow up way too fast and skip all of it. It's all just put to as iPad babies are at fault, and just be lucky that your kid doesn't mind toys that badly. Just like Toy Story 1, you just gotta learn to work together. And I guess by this logic, by Toy Story 6, I guess we're gonna find a whole movie where Forky's up front and center. We gotta finish his arc now, just to make sure we finished all of our endings. Look, I think this is a good, maybe even great movie. The Toy Story movies always are, right? The bar is so very high, especially by Pixar, but This simply is not a Pixar classic. And I think it's a real dud by the end with what it was trying to achieve and do and tell, because I don't think it was trying to tell anything, and that's a real shame. Having the same amount of blunders in a different categories as Toy Story 4. Not really well earned, kind of relying on cheap tactics like nostalgia and previous accolades, and not really justifying its existence to exist as well, as strongly as it could have. Because I do think this could have been something really special, but just not there, for some reason or another. I'd definitely watch it again. I'd watch it all sorts of many a times. It just feels to me like it's a step down from Toy Story 1, 2, and 3, and just another Toy Story. One to add to the collection, and not really think about it too much afterwards. I know a lot of people are very high praising of it right now. I feel like you give it a bit more time, people might fade on it a bit. What a shame, because I think it had a whole lot more potential if they were just daring enough to touch on it. Whew. Controversial take over. For now, though, I'm going to end it off there. My name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this video. Do tell us your thoughts on Toy Story 5. I know you've got plenty. Do feel free to share them at me. Tell me some secrets and Easter eggs I didn't notice or mention today. I'd love to hear all of your thoughts and more. I'll cover this again on what'll still probably be an amazing sometime down the line. It's just the worst so far, you know? Debatably. But otherwise, I shall see you all in a little bit. Cheerio.